Welcome, everybody, to the CFF List Week 4 Waiver Watch Draft. I'm Jay Mill. I got my partner, Willie B. We're the duo from CFF List. Joining us this week, we've got Devi Jake, founder of the Sickos League. We'll get into that in a little more later. And we've got Jared Palmgren from Chasing the Natty in Campus to Canton, host of one of the top CFF shows. We want to also hear more about that, Jared, how your podcast is rising through the rankings there over on YouTube. But hold that. But welcome, guys. We're really happy to have you here. Thanks.
Glad to be on, J-Mill. It's always a blast to be on here.
All right. And before we take any ridiculing, which Jared has already started in the pre-recording, we will face the music. Actually, Willie actually had one of his better weeks for the year. He had 67 points, but our guest last week, Chris Moxley, who we told you was really good at advising you on waiver pickups. He made it to the finals last year, I think, with a score over 100, and another one around where he landed this week. I think finished with 99 points. So Chris Moxley was our leader. He was led by Quavez Humphreys from Sam Houston, who, if you've been watching, has made this list a couple of times. I think the first seed on Quavez Humphreys from Sam Houston was planted with the G5 Hive when they had the Sam Houston beat writer on, either deep into spring camp or early in the fall camp, noting that he was destined to be wide receiver one last year, fell with an injury, handed that over to Noah Smith, but has now clearly reclaimed that wide receiver one spot for Sam Houston. But he came out with 27.6 last night against Hawaii. And Kevin Coleman always seems to have a game where it looks like he's never going to get you quite what you want from Mississippi State, but the fact that they've been playing behind now, he seems to always kind of reel it in the fourth quarter and pulled out another 20-point game to put Chris Moxley over the 90-point barometer that we like to use to judge if we've had a successful week. Chris Moxley did that. Hopefully he makes it to the top five, or his score should land him in the top five to get to our semifinal round. We all had decent quarterbacks, though. Willie B had the top quarterback with Holstein from Pitt, who I doubt anybody can find this week on the waiver wire. I had Sam Levitt, a little more of an underdog pick, but, he still managed 24 points or close to it. And then Willie had Cam Porter, who seems to be coming along from Northwestern as the workhorse there. With 15.6, which is what we're looking for in this draft that we do, trying to get 15 from the running backs and wide receivers, along with 20 from the QBs. And I nearly hit that mark with Seth Alexander, who I had for a second week in a row from Vanderbilt, who, again, is kind of the clear running back one there. We'll see if he's still available this week as we move on. But congrats to Chris Moxley. We will now open the floor to comments from anybody on performances from this week. Willie, I guess we'll let you go first. You want to speak on your team, and then we'll take some comments from the Peanut Gallery.
Yeah, no slander. You had the 67. I had 70.
Let's just clear that. So you did reach 70. All right, very nice. Okay.
So, look grim. That was the biggest downfall. I figured Alex Bowman would either show out or do nothing. He did the latter.
He had one target. One target.
Yeah, the one target. That's unfortunate. But this week we will be I won't be picking ahead for waivers for guys to hold on to for a few weeks. It's just going to be this individual. So we'll see a little bit better now that it's officially rivalry week. Now that Jared has joined the group. So that's all I have for that. I'm ready for week 4. So,
all right,
gentlemen, you have anything else on these teams?
Here's the thing. It was definitely a disappointing week in terms of your actual score, but I'm looking at these picks, and I don't think there's any that I personally wouldn't have had on my list last week. Right? Like DT Sheffield, that shocked all of us this past week but really just all of North Texas getting absolutely demolished by Texas Tech last week, just completely shocked all of us. And Sheffield ending with 0 points in terms of regular fantasy scoring. I am in a couple of leagues where return yards count, so we got a little bit of points there. Okay. But regardless, Kanai Bunfield was a solid pick. The only one I probably wouldn't have made was like Luke Grimm, because I was a little hesitant about thinking that he was going to keep up that volume week in and week out. But otherwise, I think just bad beats all around. I think you guys still did a pretty good job putting these teams together.
Yeah, thanks. I had one. We were talking, before everybody got on. Ward at North Texas obviously got hurt, and then we saw Sheffield emerge as Ward got hurt this week in that game, I believe, against Texas Tech, if I'm not mistaken. But Willie looks at the PFF numbers and the snap counts, and Sheffield is still a mystery to me because I wasn't watching that game closely. I had it on as like one of the 8 games I was looking at simultaneously. But does anybody here know? Because he had 25 snaps and previously, and we know the team runs 60 or 70, maybe even 80 plays a game. So does anybody know if Sheffield might have also been injured, or did they just not have him in the game as often? That's something we've got to kind of get to the bottom of this week.
I've got no insight onto that, but it's interesting to hear. I did not personally have the North Texas Tech game on, right. But I did notice the lacking output across the board, and that's interesting to hear that he was not even on the field for a major chunk of the game.
Yeah, it looks like maybe a third of or not even quite half the snaps, which makes me wonder if he got hurt also, or if they just didn't have him in the entire game. You any knowledge, Jared?
I don't have any knowledge, but I mean, Sheffield's been a huge piece of this offense the last couple of weeks, right? Like you said, Jeremy, 61 snaps in week 1, 48 snaps last week. Obviously, it was a bit more competitive game there, so you would expect less plays. Right. Him getting cut in half this week, I have to think there was an injury there of some kind as well. You just don't take a guy that you were feeding 8.5 targets per game the last 2 weeks off the field for no reason whatsoever.
Right. Yeah. So, maybe by Jared's recording tonight, we can find out on Monday or Wednesday if there's any more information on the Chasing the Natty program that will air after these sometime on Monday or Wednesday. But for now, as we scroll to the roster sheets for this week, Willie, I'll elaborate. I wanted to mention again, Jake, who's on Twitter as Devi Jake. We love having him on here. For those that don't know, he is the founder of the Sickos League online, which, Jake, why don't you just explain that for a minute? Because, we love having you just because of the mentality that, or your idea to eliminate players from a draft before you even start the draft. So what is the basis behind the Sickos League, and how did you come up with the idea?
So the Sickos League kind of came to me just from a summer of doing best ball drafts. There's, all those players like rounds 25 on that, you want to draft, and that you kind of are bummed because you run out of picks and you're like, oh, but I think this guy's going to kill it and this guy's going to blow up, and you end up with like one share of them every 5 drafts because you have so many of them that you don't get a chance to draft. So I wanted to do a draft where we started out already in round 20 and just kind of go from there and kind of see how it goes. And to my surprise, it really resonated with some people. We've had, you guys, Willie and Jeremy have been in it every year. This is our 3rd year doing it. I think we've only had one person not return, and we've increased the amount of people who have done it every year. And it's the league chat where randomly in January, people are like, I can't wait for Sickos this year, and people are just like excited about it, which is it's really cool to see and to be a part of. And I hope to see it continue to grow, because I know that there are other people out there that would really enjoy a format like this and that it would resonate with. But just to hash it out officially, it's a 30-round draft I think we've done every year. I think right now it's are we doing 16 teams I think this year? 16 or 18.
But the key part, tell them the key to the league is who are you eliminating from this draft?
So the key is it's 30 rounds, but you start with the top 250 players and ADP removed. So Jeremy and Willie, I know, are in some similarly deep leagues where there's, the players you're drafting are like the 600th player, but those teams still have, players in the top 250 starting for them, who you're kind of depending on. In this, you're kind of all the known sure things are out of the way, and it's, you know, who knows ball the best? Who's gonna find all the gems and knows who's actually gonna produce beyond the things that everybody knows. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, Jared. I hope that we get you to join next year or a year in the future for sure.
Yeah, I think you would love it.
Well, first, let me say, Jacob, I would love to join the league. He's usually started up right about the time that I've run out of my bankroll for the year in terms of leagues to join. That's the only reason why I haven't joined it, because I love the concept of the league. It is my guy, the league, right? There's so many times where you're in regular best balls and you're just drafting guys because, you know, that's what ADP tells you to do. You just know they should be coming off this round around this range. Versus in that league, like every guy that you have drafted in that league, there's no true ADP that deep.
Right.
And so there's no pressure to take guys at certain points or anything like that. It is 100% a roster full of guys that you love.
Yep.
And when they pop off, and it just feels all the better. So I love the concept of the league, Jake. Yeah. I would love to join it. Hit me up early next year. That way I don't run out of money to put into leagues.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, but so thanks, Jake. And then Jared, obviously, you've got one of the longer running CFF podcasts with Chasing the Natty. We were excited for you when you announced it as the season got started. I think you had not only made your way into the top 100, but even higher than that as far as YouTube podcasts go. But maybe you can, instead of me getting the details wrong, just share with us a little bit about, that success, because we've all seen the hobby growing this off season in kind of ways that it hasn't in the last few years. Now that, I think EA Sports has put the college game back out. You've got, online sites now that are supporting it in ways that they haven't. But before getting into that, like just give us the numbers and then how, Chasing the Natty, reaching these kind of new levels here.
Yeah. So it wasn't YouTube podcasts. It was Apple Podcasts.
Nice.
We reached the top 100 in Apple Podcasts for fantasy sports podcasts for the second year in a row, and we've actually broken our high. We reached up to number 65 in the country for fantasy sports. And again, a lot of people will tell you like, "Oh, there's no market for CFF." Well, we're seeing that market grow each and every year. Again, the YouTube numbers are doing really well this year. We passed 700 subscribers on the YouTube side of things, which again, drop in the bucket, but compared to where we were just a couple of years ago, it's absolutely phenomenal where we're at. I'm excited to see the platform grow more and more. We're officially the largest YouTube or college fantasy platform on YouTube, at least solely college fantasy. I know the guys over at Rookie Big Board do phenomenal work as well, but they do Devy content as well.
Right.
And so, again, we've been seeing a ton of success this year. Our numbers are higher this year than any year we've seen before. It's been phenomenal. I didn't think I would ever see this level of success when I started 4 years ago.
Right. That's awesome. It's great to see, for all of us putting out content. I think the common theme when people talk about the analysts that are covering college fantasy is it seems to be a much friendlier world than the NFL analyst world. We all do a good job of supporting each other, through retweets and being on each other's, shows, et cetera. So, great job. And with that, Willie, I think you're going to kick us off here in this week's Week 4 waiver draft. Just as a reminder, just in case there's anybody new listening or tuning in, we are picking up players that are only available in less than 30% of leagues, according to Fantrax. And the goal is to score the highest points this week. So really, you could look at these as your emergency waiver pickups, guys that can plug a hole for you in Week 4 specifically. We're not necessarily looking at them down the line. Most of them would be good players to keep on your roster for the remainder of the season. But if we skip over players that might seem as obvious pickups, it's probably because they're on a bye or they have a matchup that we think is a little bit tougher because this is a competition and we're trying to outscore each other for this week. So with that note, Willie, who do you got first? You've had all night to think about it.
Yeah, I've waffled a few times, but we're gonna go with Cam Edwards. Victor Rosa had surgery on the finger,
Okay.
so may or may not be able to take on a full load. But they had Duke last week. He
Okay.
had 21 carries for 100 yards and another touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
They get FI, what is it, Florida Atlantic. So
Florida FAU. Yep.
yeah, so
Okay.
I feel comfortable there. Have my complete list of about 27 guys. We're a little bit more prepared, but I do like it. It's 10% rostered
Yep.
for a back who's going to have double-digit carries. I'll take that.
Yeah, I've had him in a couple of leagues. I think I might have dropped him early. I saw, as soon as I dropped him, now he had the 20 carries, but I didn't know about the Rosa injury. They've got a couple of younger guys there at UConn that have kind of been getting a taste of, the load there. But it looks like Edwards might have reemerged as the true RB1 at UConn. So
Yeah, if you're talking about Darrell Robinson, yeah, he had it was 10 carries before, but that was in a blowout against
blowout.
Merrimack.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
seems like this is how Cam started last year too. You just didn't know first few weeks, and then he kind of solidified himself in that spot. So hopefully that's a good one for you.
I hope so. Jared, you're up.
I am up, and Willie, I have to admit, I am flummoxed. Not because he sniped me, but because I have two guys on my list that to me are like tiers above literally everybody else you could grab off the waiver wire this week. And
Okay.
you didn't take either of them. I was fully ready to just take whichever one you didn't take. And now you got me actually having to make a decision here
Okay.
as to who I think could possibly make it back to me on my next pick. And I don't know how to feel about that.
Okay.
I think I will go with, you know what? I'll go with my running back here because this guy's somehow still under 30% this week.
Okay.
I'm going to go Braden Sloan, running back out of Ball State. He's rostered in 28% of leagues, so right under that 30% threshold. He will not be available next week. I can tell you that right now. He started off the season extremely hot against Missouri State. Obviously, it's Missouri State, but the difference between a MAC team and a FCS team isn't the largest gap in the world. He had 21 carries, 103 yards, and a touchdown. He also had 6 receptions for 46 yards and another touchdown there. Last week against Miami, obviously the carries went down greatly because, game script was just completely out of control there. Miami absolutely destroyed Ball State. I don't think anybody was really expecting Sloan to do much in that game, but he still had 4 catches for 41 yards, so he's clearly still getting that receiving work we all know and love there. They got Central Michigan this week. He's got MAC competition. I fully expect him to have another game where he's having 25 plus touches on that offense. I think we have our new Carson Steele for the Cardinal here.
Yeah. And I think the only reason he probably remained under 30 going into this week is because of the matchup and against Miami that they had this week.
They play Miami.
People might have held off.
Yeah, they played Miami, Florida yesterday.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, like Jared said, the rest of the way should be smooth sailing, for anybody that has Sloan or can get their hands on him because you get into MAC play and it's a whole different world and we saw that he's the guy that they're going to keep feeding. So nice. Jake.
Well, I mean, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, but let's not say feeding. He still should have gotten more than 5 carries, in my opinion. They got shellacked 62-0. Let's get the game over with if that's the case of what's going on, instead of slinging it around. But I mean, he should have had more than 5 carries. I'll say that.
That is interesting. I didn't pay attention to his volume this week compared to week 1. So we'll see how that goes. I mean,
I try not to pay attention to outcomes in games like that because, like you said, Willie, it all depends on the coaching staff, right? Do they just take him out of the game, right? Because they know they're going to get shellacked, so why risk Sloan getting hurt? Again, he was carrying the ball for 2.6 yards per carry. That's a lot of physicality right there. He wasn't exactly breaking runs against a power 4 defense, so why risk it? Take him out, throw him out there whenever you need to pass the ball, but otherwise, no point.
There you go.
Won't be the case against MAC competition the rest of the way. I can tell you that much.
All right. Yeah, well, and last thing I'll say on that is it actually is really interesting because they played the FCS team in week 1, and then they had Miami this week. So, I guess we're about to find out kind of what the reality is over at
To be fair, they
State.
didn't blow out the FCS team. I think they won like 40-30 or something like that.
They definitely
42-34 was the final score there.
Yeah, it was a pretty good struggle. Should be interesting though. All right, we'll keep it moving with Jake, and then
all right.
Yeah,
well, now I'm going to be playing the guessing who the obvious person that I shouldn't be passing up game is.
Yeah. Jared's made us all check our list. Like, okay, who's the other obvious guy here? Because I've got
two guys that I think are obvious, maybe even 3. So I'm at a loss. But I'm going to go with the one who probably is not the one that Jared's referring to, but he is another Maction guy, Mr. Cade McDonald, wide receiver for Miami of Ohio. He's got 16 catches and 235 yards through 2 games. It's probably not a good selection for this exercise because they have Notre Dame this week, but he's a priority ad for me. Anywhere where he's still available. I think, we've seen him. They've only played 2 games, and both of them he's absolutely dominated. So I like what I've seen there, and that again, it's probably not the optimal pick for this and playing Notre Dame next week, but I'm doing it.
Way to follow the rules, Jake. Way to follow the rules.
I know.
So, Jake, I had McDonald written down as like he might be flying under the radar because people aren't really paying attention to Miami of Ohio. So you've now flummoxed me in a different way here by picking him first here, because I was like, I thought he'd be somebody like maybe like, again, obviously like you said, the matchup's terrible, but like I was like maybe I could like get him as like a later option, get him cheaper on the waiver wires this week. But now you put his name out there. Thanks, Jake.
Yeah. Well, and I had him. I have a line drawn of here. I know. We're going to only have 8 receivers taken, so I have my 8, and then I have a line. And then he was below the line to mention as somebody for the remainder of the season, but I probably wouldn't have been taken today. Yeah. So, all right. So yeah, it sounds like we're all believing that Maction could be fun once that gets going again.
Fingers crossed.
All right. I'm going to take the guy.
Should I predict your pick here, Jeremy?
Yeah. Well, you might throw out a name, but my pick is going to be my prediction of who Jared's other pick was going to be.
No, if it's a wide receiver, I was going to tell you, but
it is going to be a wide receiver. It is a wide receiver. Yeah. Who is it? Or you want me to pick? We'll just trust if you say it's the guy. All right. I'm taking the guy we talked about in the recap, which is Mr. Quavez Humphreys from Sam Houston. Yeah, going against New Mexico State. I've just seen too many good things from this guy. Again, what we heard in the offseason from the local reporter via the G5 Hive interviews that they were giving us, we probably all should have listened a little more. I know, Jared copied that and, took it to heart and was building the guy up as well, putting out some warnings maybe on Noah Smith. But I think what he did this week really shows what he's going to do. And, their schedule, is pretty good the next few weeks, if I'm not mistaken. So not only for this week, but I mean, if you don't have this guy, grab him for the rest of your season. He's only on 3% of rosters. And, he looks like a guy that you're not going to want to take out for the remainder of the season to me.
So not to comment on everybody's pick, but that is not the other guy I was thinking of, actually. Okay. And here's my main hesitation with Humphreys.
Yep.
5 targets, 4 targets. You're relying on hyper efficiency here with Humphreys. Now, granted, he's clearly shown that he can do that, right? But it's going to lead to some pretty big bust weeks, right? I mean, against UCF, granted, again, going up against Power 4 competition there, right? But 5 targets, 3 catches, 35 yards, right? That's just not how I personally roll. And especially like in this format where we got PPR, I definitely am going to be looking a bit more at some of the higher target guys than Humphreys.
Gotcha. I'm trying to just kind of get a reminder.
My only thing with that, though, Jared, is that the UCF matchup that's their toughest matchup of the season. And
I agree. I think it's a fair point.
Yeah,
I think it's a fair point. But again, you're still relying on him again against Rice, 31 yards per catch, against Hawaii, 26.5 yards per catch. Like even the best receivers in the world, even the ones that outmatch everybody in the world, they're not going to keep that efficiency up every week.
Right. Well,
He could also earn more targets. That's the other piece of this, right? Like, yeah, he's only got 5 targets max so far this season, but clearly with how well he's doing, they're going to try to get the ball more in his hands. So
Yeah, I
not a
think
bad pick by any stretch.
that's kind of the
Yeah.
angle I'm looking at. But yeah, just again, we always kind of wonder how the Fantrax rankings for the defense shape up. But New Mexico State, they're saying, is 85th against fantasy wide receivers. And he's got Texas State, who's middle of the pack, but UTEP at 91st, a bye, and then Western Kentucky at 118th. So I was really looking more at, like, even, I know, again, we're looking at this week, which I love, against New Mexico State, but he really seems to have a fairly easy schedule to produce similar numbers, in my opinion, for the rest of the next 5 weeks. Obviously minus the bye when he sits out, but we'll see. I think he's going to be fun to watch no matter what. The next guy, let's see. I have 2 shots to try to snatch Jared's obvious pick. None of us have got the obvious pick yet. I'm going with the replacement for Quentin Cooley. I'm taking Billy Lucas at running back for Liberty. Cooley's out with an ACL, and in his place, Billy Lucas.
Is that
Is
official?
that confirmed? Yeah.
Yeah. Hold on. Whoa. That'd be huge news if I hadn't heard that.
Okay. Well, I mean, I do have to say, I heard this from my son this morning. So normally he's pretty accurate. So it's not official, but I'm just taking what my son had said. He just texted me and said Cooley out with ACL, and I figured the kid had done his homework. So we will have to look it up. But I'm going to roll the dice either way until we do, whether or not we confirm it. I was leaning towards him regardless, and then maybe Dorian meant to put a question mark behind that this morning. So let's we'll hold off on saying it's an ACL until we know officially. But I maybe trusted my son too much, or I didn't see a punctuation to end the sentence to know if it was a question mark or a period. But either way, in his place, I love what Billy Lucas did with the 21 carries, 104 yards, and 3 TDs against UTEP. They've got ECU this week. I'm not too scared of them. And obviously it includes his week 3 numbers, but as the backup, Lucas is averaging 17 points a game. So it's a kid that they've been trying to work into the mix at Liberty no matter what, which tells me if Quentin is in a position to come back, they won't have to overdo it in terms of rushing him back to the field. So keep an eye on the news. Let's see what happens with Quentin Cooley, but I will lock in with Billy Lucas one way or another here from Liberty at 2% or 3%. I guess he went up overnight to 3%.
Yeah.
And this is the only round we will do the snake in. So Jake, it's going to come back to you for your second pick, and we still haven't landed on Jared's obvious pick.
I got my fingers crossed over here. I'm going to be so happy if I can get both of these guys. I don't think you even realize.
So am I allowed to guess who Jared's guy is? I think that Jared's guy is Giles Jackson, but I'm going to go with Devontae Ross. He's the wide receiver 10 so far. He had 11 targets in week 1, 9 targets last week. He only caught 5 of them, but he went for 142 and 2 touchdowns. He's already got 3 touchdowns on the season. He's seems to have a pretty strong grip on the wide receiver 1 spot there, and they have FAMU coming to town this weekend. So I like him to continue his production.
Yeah, he really popped off this week. He is when Jared was talking with the sickos leagues and that type of a league where you're literally drafting your guys. I just clicked on the rostered button on Fantrax. I've got him in 6 of my 9 leagues. He's I don't think I can quite do a victory lap on him yet. He's got more to prove this season, but he's a guy that I felt with the players that had moved on, and with the absence of Christian Lewis, who would have been competing with him for the number 1 spot at Troy, but is now kind of battling cancer and taking the season off. It seemed like the door was wide open for him to come in, and there didn't seem to be a clear competitor for those wide receiver 1 targets. So I was hoping he slipped to me in the second or in the third pick here, but I think that's a great pick, Jake.
So Jake, you didn't take my obvious guy, but you did take my number 1 wide receiver on my board. So some consolation there, I guess. No, I'm going quarterback here. Okay. I'm surprised nobody's gone this direction yet, considering in my personal opinion, there's on the waiver wire this week, there's a bunch of guys that are safer guys, like if you need some guys to plug in 20, 25 points, I think you'll get that this week with other guys. I'll throw out some names real quick since I can't pick another quarterback, but like guys like Billy Edwards, Curtis Rourke, Sam Levitt, I think all of those guys are like really good stopgaps. If you got your top quarterback on bye this week, throw them in there, get 20, 25 points, move on. Yep. There's one guy, in my opinion, due to an injury this week, that has a pretty astronomical ceiling here. And that is Caden Veltkamp, quarterback out of Western Kentucky, rostered on 10% of leagues. He's got Toledo this week. Yep. Obviously, I don't love the Boston College matchup the next week, but this dude's been phenomenal in the 2 games that we have seen him start. And granted, again, not the strongest of competition, right? With Middle Tennessee State, we're not entirely sure what that defense really looks like. And then Old Dominion completely just giving it up. Regardless, Veltkamp looks like he fits this system to a T. And last week, just another phenomenal performance from him. 30 passes, 27 completions, almost 400 yards at 398, 5 touchdowns through the air. Oh, by the way, this dude can run a little bit. He also got a touchdown on the ground last week. I really think that the death of the Western Kentucky offense for CFF has been a little over exaggerated so far, because again, TJ Finley put up a crapper against Alabama. Guess what? Most G5 teams are going to put up a crapper against Alabama. And then the next week, people are like, oh, he only scored, like Finley only threw 1 touchdown. Yeah, that was weird. Like Western Kentucky doesn't typically do that. Regardless, he still threw for over 350 yards and threw for almost 40 times. Like the offense, the base of the offense is still there. And I think Veltkamp, quite possibly, given what we've seen, can unlock the offense to an even higher degree than what we've seen so far. So give me Caden Veltkamp, Western Kentucky quarterback. I think if you want to shoot for the ceiling at quarterback this week, he's the guy. Also, Jeremy, don't give Jake Veltkamp.
Yeah. Sorry, that's why.
No, the board is final. He's there.
Yeah, hold on.
Don't do that to me. I waited so long to get Veltkamp on the way back.
We'll do the old cut and paste, and Willie took it. That's what happens when I try to do Willie's job here. All right. Now, yeah. By the way, do we know the extent of Finley's injury? And
he was on crutches.
Okay,
he was in the game.
And I took the attitude of it might not matter based on everything you just said, Jared. He just seemed to run that offense way better than Finley has all year, because for those of us who have Finley and had high hopes, he's been a pretty big disappointment in terms of what you would have expected coming out of that offense that you described.
Let me do a little bit of research just to see if anything's popped up on Twitter this morning.
And I mean, I was doing my Cooley research. The quote from the coach is, "It does not look good" on Cooley. And normally they won't even go that far if there's any sign of hope. So I don't know that it's an ACL, but the coach's post-game comment was, "It does not look good" as far as Cooley goes at Liberty.
Yeah, so I got a tweet here saying Western Kentucky starting quarterback TJ Finley comes out to the sideline before the second half on crutches, right lower leg encased in ice.
Yeah. There you go. And like I said, this is the kind of performance that would make me think it doesn't even matter. Like, Veltkamp may have just won the job.
We thought the same thing after the bowl game, and then they went and grabbed Finley out of the portal.
Right, exactly. So. All right, well, there it is. There are the 2 obvious picks for the week, guys, Veltkamp and Sloan. Go grab them.
Which absolutely means they're both completely falling apart this week. That's how things go for me.
All right. Well, we'll see. You've advanced to the semifinals, I think, in both years here, Jared. So you've proven your worth. So, Willie, we are not snaking here. So you've got a single pick, and then it's back to Jared.
Back to you.
So Willie B.
All right. So
26 remaining picks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're going to go with the guy who should find the end zone this weekend against a lowly UCLA defense, and we're going to go Aaron Anderson from LSU.
Okay.
He is rostered in 17% of leagues. Let's see here. He's doing all right with his 6. He's averaging 6 targets a game, 5 catches, 64, 563, and 596. So I believe he should finally get into the end zone like he did against USC the first week. But
I can't say I know too much about the kid. It's not a name that I've landed on before. So I think I might have to trust you there.
He's a
Jake
4-star went to Alabama and transferred to LSU, if I recall correctly.
He's a borderline 5-star, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Okay. He's clearly a starter with the production he's had right now. So I'm not mad at the pick. I just don't know as much about the kid as I know of some of these other guys, Willie. So it's not unlike you to throw those kind of guys in here, and it's worked for you in the past. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, the Intimidators in our that's our home league. We have him, so I feel comfortable in what Anderson's going to do.
All right, nice. We'll see who Jared follows that up with. He's out of his obvious pick. So he's,
I thought we were going straight now. So wouldn't it now be your pick, J-Mo?
Oh Lord. Okay. Oh no, straight meaning return back. Like
yeah, right. Yeah. So
then Willie B should have another pick then.
No. It's a little convoluted here, but yeah, it's going. Now we're just going like we just started, like, meaning there was a snake, meaning he doesn't get double picks.
Right.
So I guess technically we're snaking back, but no double picks.
Isn't he going to get double picks at the end then?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm confused because then, like, by the end of this round, all three of us will have 3 picks.
So it kind of what it turns out is like the person with the first pick ends up with the last pick. That's how we end up with it.
Okay, sorry. You guys can edit this part out later. I was just getting confused there.
No, you're
My
fine.
apologies.
No problem at all.
Meaning, just for clarity, like at the end of my pick in this round, it will go back to Willie.
Gotcha.
Here, yeah.
So no more back-to-back picks. Got it.
No more back.
All right. Well, if I'm up now, then I'm going to go with another running back here because I'm afraid of running out of good running back options, and I'm going to go Micah Bernard, running back out of Utah. Roster on 17% of rosters. He's got Oklahoma State this week. Oklahoma State's their defense is a little hard to kind of figure out so far, considering that they played South Dakota, then they played Arkansas, they played Tulsa last week. 3 different levels of competition. Last time they faced a legit workhorse back at the Power 4 level was Jaquindon Jackson. He went off on them, 24 carries, 149 yards, and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah,
I'm hoping to ride that again with Michael Bernard here. I'm hoping that defense bends and breaks again this week against him. Without Cam Rising, this Utah offense has absolutely decided to start riding on Bernard. This is a guy that entered the transfer portal at one point this offseason, and the coaching staff fought tooth and nail for him to come back. It's been a bit of a committee there the last couple of years. So again, I was a little hesitant to believe it when there was one game there of Bernard getting the workload against Baylor there, 19 carries, 118 yards, and a touchdown through the air. And then he goes out and does it again last week against Utah State, 17 carries, 123 yards, and a touchdown. Again, I'm hoping for a little bit more volume there. Hopefully we can break 20 touches this week, but regardless, I like the matchup. I think Utah will be successful against Oklahoma State, so give me Bernard.
I like it. Yeah. After week 1, you didn't quite know what was going on there. They like everybody had the soft matchup, and he had 5 carries, I think. So it looked like, oh, here we go again. But it looks like that was just more of the situation and them playing an FCS school. Because I don't think you give a guy back-to-back carries in the mid-teens and higher if he's not going to be your guy on a routine basis. So, yeah, I think he's the clear guy at Utah, and it helps him that Rising, is injured again because they're going to need to lean on a veteran. All right, Jake.
All right, I am going with. Let's see his roster percentage here. 18% owned. New Mexico State running back, former Oklahoma running back and blue chip, Seth McGowan. He had battled some legal troubles at some point, but it's nice to see him come out the other end of it. He had a very promising freshman year at Oklahoma, I think like almost 4 years ago now. And he has, his first 2 games of the season, he had 20 points and 17 points. Last week or yesterday, he, came up against Fresno, and his team did not score a single point. So, not much to hang your hat on there, but that's a good defense. And he still averaged 4.3 yards carry and still touched the ball, or had 14 involvements, rushes plus targets. So I like him. They've got a cushy matchup against Sam Houston State. I think they ride the wave, and he has another big game.
Yeah, it's a good find. Looking at his carries, 11 carries, 15 carries, 11 carries again this past week. Hasn't hit the end zone since week 1, but with the volume he's getting, I think it's a good choice, and at least he's seeing the activity that you want.
For me, he kind of fits the mold of and not like his play style, but just the good, decent P5 player, tearing down and having the ability to kind of dominate that lower level. Like a Damian Webb or someone like that. The Kalen LeBourne at Marshall a couple years ago.
Maybe even kind of like, even though he came from JUCO, it was kind of like Callaway last year at Old Dominion also.
Right.
Kind of former, Alabama commit, goes JUCO, comes in, proves himself, and actually had a pretty big night last night in place of Ott there with Callaway.
Right. He did have a good game.
In that same kind of mold. I know what you mean. Yeah.
I believe the term for that is called big fish, small pond.
There you go. Exactly. All right. I am just kind of looking strategically, trying to figure out if there's a better move to make here at any particular position. There's nobody like really popping out, so I think I'm going to go ahead and grab the receiver that I like. Even prior to Jake mentioning him, Giles Jackson's guy that I like the amount that he's being targeted, 8 targets a game. I'm going to go grab him from Washington. They're playing Northwestern this week. He should be available in quite a few leagues as everyone tried to figure out who the go-to guy at Washington's going to be. He's certainly going to be one of the guys that should remain in the mix. He had 8 for 162 and a touchdown last night against Washington State. But again, the fact that he's averaging 8 targets a game is what I like there. He's getting pretty consistent targets, if I'm recalling the stats correctly. So that'll be my guy there from Washington that I fill my receiver spots with.
I like the pick, Jeremy. I had him as one of my top options for today. He's especially good in a format like this with PPR. Yeah. My only concern with Jackson is that given the offense that Washington seems to be running, it still seems like Hunter and Boston are getting more of those high-value end zone targets. Right. Versus Jackson's very much a guy that helps them move between the 20s, helps them get down to the goal line, and then they'll either run it in with Coleman or they're throwing it out to the boundary with one of their 2 big outside wide receivers. But PPR, that probably doesn't matter nearly as much.
Right. Yeah, he's definitely because he is converting those targets into catches, which is always good. But I hear he had his
100% rate.
Touchdown. Yeah. He had his first and only touchdown this week. So point noted there. But also, since it is PPR, he's going to kind of get you those guaranteed 5 or 6 catches for hopefully 70 or 80 yards. Then that'll be his minimum output. Hopefully. So there you go. So now we kind of get in a correct order here. We go back to Willie.
All right, I'm going to go running back. We're going to go Christian Washington from Coastal Carolina.
Okay.
Washington, they have Virginia this week. A little bit tougher matchup for them, but they've given up 4 rushing touchdowns on the ground. He is a guy who's going to get you double-digit carries. He scored 2 touchdowns in each of the last 2 games. I know, obviously, Temple is not as good as people expected them to be, but 13 carries, 16 carries, 15 carries. That's just kind of what you need as far as like the VP that you go for. So 5% rostered, and so those are the kind of guys that you're going to need at some point in the season. And this is going to be, this is probably his toughest matchup for probably at least another month and a half. But I'll take Washington here.
Yeah, well, and as of last night, they had Virginia 92nd against versus fantasy running backs. Coastal stepping up in competition, playing them. But the only note I would add for Washington is he seems to be the beneficiary of a couple of injuries. I think Bennett, the longtime committee member there at Coastal, had an injury and didn't play this week. And then they had a new guy emerge, another new guy in week one, Singleton, who seems to have gotten hurt last week. So, with those guys injured and Washington holding his own, seems to be a solid pick. You just hope that if either of those get healthy, they don't eat into his production. But if you go back to week one, they were still feeding him the ball when they were all healthy. So, seems to be some good logic there. All right,
Hey, Jared.
This is all going to fall apart for me so badly, but I'm not going to lie, y'all. I'm living my high life right now. I've got my top 3 picks going into this, and now I'm about to get my top tight end pick. Give me Tanner Koziel, tight end out of Ball State, rostered on 28% of rosters. Again, another Ball State option here, but this offense runs through 2 guys right now, and it's Koziel and it's Braden Sloan. Koziel, we saw get quite a bit of work last week. Again, 8 targets against Miami, 5 receptions, 39 yards. Again, not the greatest in the world, but you love that volume. 7 targets the week before against Missouri State. There's going to be, I promise you, 0 tight ends that'll be consistently coming up on waivers the rest of this year that are going to be getting, 7.5, 8 targets every single game. And so I think Koziel, similar to kind of Veltkamp, I think if you're looking for a tight end option, if Koziel is still available somehow in your leagues and you need a tight end option, I think he's the clear number 1 ad at the position right now. I think he's got a nice matchup here against Central Michigan. Hopefully get some early action or maction here, and hopefully it blows it out of the water for me on this team.
Yes, the Ball State double up.
I'll also eat a little bit of crow because I was hesitant about Koziel this year, considering the disappointing year he had last year. But pretty clearly, he's a pretty big focal point of the offense this year.
Yeah. And we'll see if how'd Samanza do against Miami? I'm guessing not very good based on the outcome of that score. But it was a QB that I was told had some decent skills. But we'll see how their quarterback plays out with Samanza there at Ball State. But all 3 of them made it into the leaders list, the year-to-date leaders list after their first game last week. So it was a surprising, 3 out of 4 positions had a Ball State member in the top 12 or top 16 list last week.
Yeah, Samosa had a rough day. 111 passing yards, negative 24 rushing yards. Let's see, 61% completion percentage.
Yeah, his day was reflected by the score of that game.
100%.
Yeah, okay. To be expected in that situation also. All right, Jake, we bought you some time there. Who are you going
Lord
with?
knows I needed it.
Who are you going with your 4th pick here? Will you fill out the running backs, or will you go somewhere else?
I think I'm going to fill out the running backs. I'm going to go and roll the dice and go against my my paradigm of saying names that I can pronounce, and I'm going to go with Zuberi Mobley. I think I said that right. I hope.
From FAU?
No. Yeah, from FAU. He's a clearly high ceiling guy. He just went off for 33 points against Florida International. He had, by far his most work for the season, though, as well. Hopefully that signifies a change in how they're going to conduct their offense going forward and get him, continue to get him involved. They do have another easy matchup at UConn. UConn seems to be, according to Fantrax, 109th at points they surrender to running backs in fantasy. I'm here for it. It's hard to find running backs that are getting 20 carries, and he's getting a little bit of passing work, not much. He's got 4 targets on the season, caught all of them. Found the end zone 3 times last week. Let's see if he can do it again against UConn.
Okay. All right. The pressure's on me now to just make the same decision. Do I want to go running back or quarterback? Yeah, I'm torn between two quarterbacks. Just double check the defenses they're playing, and they're equally as bad. Not just by Fantrax's numbers, but by the overall passing yards allowed. Um, but I'm going to land on Tucker Gleason from Toledo, who, as of last night, was rostered on 20%, playing against Western Kentucky, who has been very bad against very good for fantasy quarterbacks, 131st as of last night. But that said, they're also 110th in yards allowed. And Tucker Gleason has been very consistent. Pulled out the big SEC win last night. What I really like is the fact that he's had 3 passing touchdowns in all 3 of his games this year. To average 23.8 on the season. So he's got a good duo of wide receivers. They've got the perfect matchup. This will be the top producing quarterback, even over Vanderkamp this week, regardless of what Jared says.
I like Gleason. It's funny that you say that he's been consistent because he has been consistent in scoring points. But if you look at his completion percentage from game to game, 35% against UMass to 82% against at Mississippi State. I just love the difference there.
That is interesting. I did not. That one escaped me. But wow, and 8 of those completions, 3 of them ended up being touchdowns, which is
right.
even more incredible. Yeah.
I appreciate you bringing Gleason up, 1, because I love him, but 2, I didn't realize he was under 30%. I thought he had been drafted enough this offseason to be above that. So Thank you for letting me know that he's pretty widely available right now, because that just made my job on the waiver wire article and the show a lot easier.
Great, good. Glad we
He's got a 30-yard rushing floor too, if I recall correctly. I had a note, nothing rushing floor.
I'm shocked they're not running him more like that. Like in the past, that was kind of his main thing, is he would come in and like he wasn't a good passer, so they would run him a whole bunch. But like they haven't even really ran him that much. But like you said, Jake, he still has a pretty nice floor with that too.
Yeah, and I think he's got good receivers now too. So with Newton and I forget the other guy, but
Vandross.
Yeah, Vandross. Yeah, he's got a good little duo there. So.
Okay. Yeah, so it wasn't a snipe at, even though, because I actually put him a little bit ahead of this guy late, but I do really, really like that pick, Jeremy. But we're going to go Curtis Rourke from Indiana.
That's who I was choosing between. That was my other option was Rourke from Indiana. Yeah,
so I just like what the staff has brought in from JMU, and then of course the players, and I just like everything that they're doing right now. So still have another great matchup this week.
Yeah,
as they get Charlotte at home. So I expect another decent outing from Rourke.
Yeah, I think my final decision was like, maybe they route Charlotte so badly that it could be a weird situation where just Rourke doesn't have to produce as much, and that was kind of my deciding factor on if I was going to take Rourke or Gleason, because they're both playing really bad passing defenses, but Indiana's looked so good. I think they could just do so many other things to keep Rourke down just a little bit. But I mean, I think Rourke no doubt gets his 20 points, that you want, and should have a great game too. Okay.
All right, wide receiver, Jared.
What? I'm deciding between 2 guys. I'm again hoping I can get both. But I think I'm going to go with the stack here. I'm going to stack Veltkamp with his number 1 option, and that is Keyshawn Johnson, the wide receiver there out of West Kentucky, roster on 18% of rosters so far. Shockingly, not the leading target for Western Kentucky is not Dalvin Smith or Easton Messer to this point in the season. It is Johnson, who's really come out of nowhere over the last couple of weeks, and he is currently leading the team in targets. Again, 22 targets compared to Easton Messer's 16. And Messer still has some value in his own right, but Johnson's definitely that top outside option now for this offense. He has averaged 8.5 targets over the last 2 weeks. He's hit over 119 in each of the last 2 weeks. Scored 2 touchdowns this past week, which is something that I've been kind of waiting on for him to finally get some touchdowns, given the volume that he was getting. And I gotta love what I'm seeing here so far. Again, like we mentioned before, this as you can see with us grabbing both Gleason and Veltkamp off the waiver wire this week in this show, we expect that Toledo Western Kentucky matchup to be a pretty high scoring matchup this week. I am fully ready for Johnson to find the end zone at least once in that game.
Yep. No, that's a good one. Yeah, was Johnson on your radar before the season, Jared? I'm just curious.
Not before the season. I started looking at him last week after he led the team in targets against Western Kentucky. I wanted to make sure just one more week to make sure that wasn't just a fluke kind of deal. And, well, he followed it up with a really nice performance this past week, an even better performance, actually.
Yeah, because the name I'm surprised hasn't done more that I was kind of hoping would bounce back from injury. It was Matheson. You haven't seen any Matheson. He's getting like 0, 1, and 2 targets, I think, in his game log. But I don't know if, he just never fully recovered or guys were just better than him and passed him up. But, yeah, out of the 3 guys I thought at Western Kentucky were going to be the guy, just guessed totally wrong because I had no idea, about Johnson. But, it looks like they've settled on him. And we know how valuable that guy can be, and that guy being the wide receiver 1 in the WKU system. So
I'm more shocked at Dalvin Smith than Matheson. Dalvin Smith only having 10 targets to this point in the season, 75 yards. Like, even if he had tight end eligibility still, he still wouldn't be valuable.
Right.
Like that's the biggest, honestly, one of the bigger shocks out there of them all right now.
Yeah. Yep.
Because he looked phenomenal in the bowl game last year.
Yep.
But that's the game.
There it is.
Jake, who you got, man?
All right, so looks like everyone else has a quarterback, so I can wait on that and should go tight end. In my notes, I've got tight end is a wasteland. So with that, I'm going to go with Eli Wilson from App State. He's coming off a 7-target, 4-catch game with a touchdown. He's got 2 touchdowns so far in the season. So far, they've seemed like they want to throw the ball a lot. So I like him to be the beneficiary of that. I don't necessarily trust Fantrax's saying that it's a tough matchup against Southern Alabama. I'm not, who knows how they play.
They probably play teams with bad tight ends.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I'm not buying that as this impossible matchup for him. I think that both teams are going to throw a lot, and I hope that he's, gets a chunk of that. Eli Wilson, baby.
Okay.
Okay, Mel, your tight end who's coming up?
Yeah, you guys took 2 that were in my 5, and I didn't really have a standout favorite, among that group of 5 that I was looking at. And, since it's only Willie that needs a tight end, he may take one of the guys that I'm choosing between, which is I'm choosing between Lake McCree from USC going against Michigan. He's getting he's had 5 targets in each of his last couple of games with 10.6 and 12.1 points. But, I'm kind of having fun riding the old trick train. He did okay for me last week in the waiver watch with 8.9 points, which I don't think anybody's going to be totally disappointed about if you're filling a tight end hole with 8.9. And he's going against Colorado, and it's always fun to cheer against players playing Colorado now. I think I just talked myself into it. Let's go Michael Trigg. I have a feeling he could be fun. He might talk a little trash out there too. Maybe see some nice back and forth with those guys from Colorado. So let's go Trigg from Baylor, who has officially started his comeback in full force. He's had 4 catches in each of the last 2, 6 and 5 targets, 9 points a game. This week he's going to have a big enough game to get his average up to that sacred double-digit territory for a tight end. And Jared's very
nothing
happy
more than to see.
Yes.
What was that, Jeremy?
Jared has been rooting for the kid, genuinely, I think.
I would love nothing more than to see Trigg bounce back in a big way.
Yep, and he started. He's finally found a home. I think they're actually utilizing him. He seems to be, focused and doing good. So let's roll with him twice.
So this next guy was the second wide receiver on my list for the week, and we talked about them a little bit. This is going to be just a circus of a game, but we're going to go Junior Vander Ross from Toledo.
Yep.
He's coming off 9 targets, 7 receptions, 73 yards. He scored in each of their 3 games, and I expect him to be one of many getting into the end zone in this what should be a shootout of a game.
Yeah.
And he is 3% rostered is all.
Well, that's pretty incredible. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, obviously I like it because I've got his quarterback, and I've mentioned him as one of the reasons Gleason's doing so well. So I'm there with you on that one.
All right, so I'm going to take my kicker now.
All right, Jared,
Cool. I got chuckles out of that. Thank God.
Jared's final.
So yeah, I got to take a wide receiver here, obviously, and my guy did make it back to me.
Okay.
Well, he did not snipe him for me. That was the person I was afraid he was going to snipe me. I don't love the matchup, but you guys know me. I love the play system, and historically, they're one of the best things you could just count on every single year is an outside wide receiver from Mike Gundy going off. And while Rashad Owens is doing well in his own right, he is actually being beaten out by one Dejon Stribling, the wide receiver out of Oklahoma State, rostered on 15% of rosters right now. Stribling actually was outproducing Owens to start last year before he went down with his injury. Owens kind of took over from there, didn't really look back. Obviously now, I don't think we're ever going to see the absolute ceiling that Stribling could have had Owens not clearly established himself as that secondary option on the outside there. But regardless, 8 targets, 9 targets, 8 targets over the last couple of weeks. He popped off against Tulsa last week, 174 yards and 2 touchdowns there for one of the best performances from a wide receiver on the week. I don't think we've seen the last of Stribling this week. Like I said, I don't love this matchup against Utah. It was one of the reasons why I kind of hesitated putting Alan Bowman on my waiver list for this week for this show, even though he's been doing pretty solid the last couple of weeks. But regardless, I think that Stribling and this Oklahoma State offense is good enough to where Stribling should still have himself a pretty nice day.
Yep. Yeah, my choice for second receiver was Giles Jackson and Stribling, and I think I've passed on him for the same reasons you mentioned. You were a little hesitant, and that's because they're playing Utah. But yeah, I don't think that matters in this case. Like I said, he probably would have been the third receiver I took if I had a third slot here. So, good choice. All right.
Thank you.
Jake, who is your quarterback going to be?
So I feel like in an exercise like this, you do want to shoot ceiling, but I'm going to kind of go against my own advice here. Well, possibly. I think Billy Edwards has been great for floor so far. I think Jared mentioned that earlier. He's getting 25 points a game. I'm going to go with Billy Edwards mostly because they play Villanova this week, and I like his chance to have 30 or so points by half, and we'll go from there. I think there's Alan Bowman was someone who I have on my list who's strong consideration. There's a few others. Ethan Hampton, I think, is a ceiling guy. He's only played 2 games, and one of them was at Notre Dame. But in the other game, he had over 40 points, and it's a action battle against Buffalo. But yeah, I think Billy Edwards gives me the best chance at a big blow up half, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm proud of us as a group that we have taken the top 4 quarterbacks that I had on my list as a unit here. So I think everybody did a great job and took the best 4 available here. Edwards has been no joke. That's all I could say about him this week. He, you would have. I don't think anybody would have imagined this after just seeing him come in to run the belldozer for Maryland at the end of last season and goal line situations. I thought he was just kind of going to be the big clumsy quarterback that could be put in to get into the end zone at the goal line. But yeah, this kid has been throwing it well to the benefit of Felton and Prater down there. Yeah, those guys are eating because of Edwards.
Yeah, I was bummed that he had won the job. I was a big MJ Morris fan. I thought he kind of got the short end of the stick at NC State, and he won the spring game MVP. And I was really surprised to hear Edwards, name continue to pop up, and like this can't be happening. And now I'm fully rooting for Edwards. He's been doing awesome.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch. Okay, so that's your final pick. 2 picks left in the draft. I waited for this slot because I didn't think anybody was going to take this guy. He's been a little bit off the radar. His points per game don't even indicate that he's a guy you should be looking at yet, which is Rasul Faison from Utah State. He's the clear running back 1 now after Briggs went down with an ACL tear. I think that one has been proven a couple weeks ago. Faison is the former Marshall running back who got out of town after he realized he'd be playing behind Ali and Laybourne. So he smartly moved on to Utah State, where I think last year, he was splitting carries like we thought he would this year. But I think this week is a good indicator of, what we can plan to see, for the Mountain West games that are coming up. He had 19 carries for 115 yards. He didn't hit the end zone, but I think it's a situation where it's just a matter of time before that happens. He's getting the volume, that you want. So I'm rolling the dice a little bit here, throwing a name out there that was a little bit off the radar, but he's playing Temple too, which I think is the other thing that probably sold me on him going into my lineup is I don't think Temple has too much to offer there to hold him back. So let's roll with the former Marshall running back now at Utah State, Rasul Faison. All right.
Not bad. We'll finish it out here with the tight end spot, and we'll go with the Golden Eagle from Southern Miss. We're going to go Kyron Heath.
Okay.
1% rostered. He is, let's see. He's coming off of just a 4-target game, but he had 7 targets the previous week. He's gotten into the end zone the last 2 games, which is all you can really hope for, when we're talking about tight ends that are not in the top 20. So love the matchup against Jackson State. And feel like we didn't do too bad this week. Did not get Jared's blue chippers, but I think we're going to do all right.
I'm going to eat so much crow after this week.
No, there's no excuses for Jared this week because he, according to his own words, he got every single player that he wanted this week. So he cannot blame anyone but himself if he has a poor performance.
I got my QB 1, I got my tight end 1, I got my top 2 running backs, and my wide receiver 2 and 3.
Right.
So you're right. Like if there's no, you guys took all my players. No, like if I fail this week, it's completely on my own analysis.
All right. Well, we're rooting for both of you. The better we look as a group, the more serviceable we are to the communities, and that's what we want to be. So,
Agreed.
We're not ever really rooting against anyone. We just want to see high scores across the board, week in and week out. We couldn't thank you guys more for joining us. Good luck. I think everybody did draft a great team. So
do we want to go over any names that didn't make the board? Because I got a few.
That's a good idea. We have a couple minutes here. So Jared, kick us off. Give us 2 or 3 players that you think could still be beneficial, because there certainly are some on my list here too.
I'll go with some names I think you guys haven't talked about in the past. I could bring up Rajah Harris or Javon Jackson, but let me bring up Demi Sumo. Running back out of Kentucky, benefiting a little bit from Jason Patterson being missing from yesterday's game, and obviously Chip Trayanum, but he's slowly but surely kind of carving himself out to a pretty sizable role there in that Kentucky offense. He had, let's see if I can pull up the numbers real quick. Where is he at? There we go. 22 for 98 last week against Georgia's defense, which is obviously no small feat in and of itself. And I watched that whole game, unfortunately, and he looked really, really solid throughout that entire game. He's got Ohio this week. I think if he's still the only back in that backfield really for this next week, he could have himself a pretty monster game this week. Another name that if I want to go deeper down to keep an eye on is wide receiver out of Eastern Michigan, Oron Singleton. He's got St. Francis this week, rostering 2% of leagues. The week 2 game against Washington was obviously bad. 4 targets, 1 catch, 1 yard, whatever. I'm looking more at his games of more equal competition against UMass, where he had 9 targets for 8 receptions, or 89 yards and a touchdown. And this past week against Jacksonville State, 10 targets, 8 receptions, 89 yards there. So I think that Eastern Michigan could be carving out a pretty sizable role for Singleton down the road, especially once they get into MAC play. So those are my 2 kind of deeper plays that people could go for this week.
All right, great. Yeah, I didn't know about the Eastern Michigan guy. I'll have to look a little deeper in that. What is? I'm guessing his percentage is really low. Did you mention that, Jared?
Yeah, again, I think Singleton's like 3% and Sumo is 3% as well.
Yeah, great. Jake, you got anybody that?
I do. I'm going to rattle off 3 wide receivers really quick. One of them should come as no surprise to you guys. I mentioned him last time, and I pretty much mentioned him anytime I can talk about him, and thankfully he's been balling out the last 2 weeks. So here it goes. My boy Dante Wright from Temple. He's got 20 catches, 200 yards, and 2 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. He's literally all they have on offense, and I think he's going to continue to feast throughout the rest of the year. Skylar Bell is the next name from UConn. He transferred in from Wisconsin. He's shown a connection with both Nick Evers, who was with him at Wisconsin, and the other quarterback's name escapes me right now. But he had 13 targets last week. He's shown a good floor so far, and I really do think a spike week is coming for him. And then the third wide receiver I'm going to mention is Luke Wysong. He's ninth in the country in targets so far. They've had a pretty tough schedule for New Mexico, a couple of P4 matchups. I think that their schedule lightens up a lot of the rest of the way. He was productive as a true freshman, but never really put it all together after that. But he's, on pace for by far his most productive season right now. They do have Fresno State this week, so maybe not a plug and play kind of move, but he is definitely someone I'm keeping tabs on.
Yeah, I do want to also, you mentioned a player there that Willie B and I picked up in the Kings Classic, contrary to Jared's advice this week, just to let him know I am a regular viewer of Chasing the Natty, where he had Dante Wright listed as a player that might be a flash in the pan. Has your tune changed on that, Jared, or was this the other fluke week for Dante Wright from Temple?
No, I have to admit he's again two weeks in a row. They're starting to become a trend here. I'm not fully ready to have him be like, I'm not fully ready to eat crow yet, but again, he's got a nice matchup against Utah State this week.
Yeah.
If he pops off for a third time, I'll fully eat crow and say like, all right, I thought I was wrong on Dante Wright. He's a legit option. I still don't love Temple. It's kind of the same way as like I like the UConn players like Cam Edwards. I actually like Skylar Bell quite a bit there right now. Problem is those are teams that just aren't going to score a ton.
Right.
And so like I think you just find ceilings higher with some other players. But regardless, you guys know me, I'm a volume guy. If Dante Wright's getting 10 plus targets every single week, I can't not talk about him.
Yeah, and I followed your logic last week when you mentioned that they're just a really bad team, but the targets just screamed that like he's the only good thing on this team and they're going to force feed him the ball no matter what, which sometimes you get into that situation where there's just that one guy that is going to do everything, or they're going to try to have him do as much as he can because he's the only option they have that's worth a damn, frankly. So, luckily he won us the game, and we had to go 2-0 in Kings Classic to stay alive. So he got us 25 points, thankfully. But I have to admit, I was a little hesitant putting him in based on Jared Palmgren's recommendations this week in Chasing the Natty. But I'm glad I went against the grain and used my own brain and consulted with Willie B, of course, prior to making that lineup switch.
But no, we definitely needed it. That's for sure.
Yeah, Willie, you have a couple?
Yeah, one other name I'll throw out, and it's the New Mexico State transfer. He's out at Duke now, Scar Thomas, who's carving himself a role. He has 52 carries on the season. Yet to find the end zone, but I that's coming. Trust me.
Well, that's interesting. That's we've got another New Mexico State running back chosen today, so um, that would make me think that they. Oh no, wait, you're talking about at Duke now.
Yeah,
Yeah, he transferred from New Mexico
He's
State.
you're right.
Okay,
He from
yeah,
New Mexico State. Yeah,
gotcha. Okay, I had it mixed up. Had it reversed. Okay, good. That doesn't interfere with Jake's pick. Then he won't be interrupting carries there for Seth
yeah.
McGowan.
And like I said, I know it was against UConn, where he had 22 carries and 122 yards. But I just think that he's just on the verge of filling into this offense, and should find the end zone here in the next few weeks.
Okay. Yeah, I've got one at running back, and for some reason, people tend to kind of steer away from Army running backs because it can be a little hit or miss, and it takes a while to know who's going to be the guy. But Kanye Udo seems to be the one this year. He's only rostered in 5%. They're playing a Rice team that should give up a decent amount of rushing yards. He's averaging 16.2, and he's had 14 carries and 15 carries in his 2 games with 3 TDs to go along with that. So even though there's only a 2-game history here since they had an early bye, there was noise that Udo would be the guy coming out of Army, and it looks like that's going to be the case. So I would not shy away from him just because he's at Army, because that's what they do, is run the ball. Then at receiver, Cam Camper continues to impress at his new home. At Boise State, they're playing Portland State. It could be one where he leaves early, but or whooping cough cancels the game, as Jared pointed out in Twitter this week. But I like Cam Camper and what he's doing as far as a steady production with 15.9 and 15.2 in his 2 games this season. And he's a name we know can produce from his fantasy history as long as he's healthy. So I will leave it at that.
All right. And then the last guys, I'm looking forward to seeing how these guys are. Emmett Brown was the quarterback that I thought might get taken, and then Justin Marcotte, his one of his main men there. I see that in the next month, those 2 guys will probably end up being on someone's waiver teams.
Yeah, and Emmett's throwing to the new reigning CFF wide receiver 1, Nick Nash.
That is correct.
Coming off of a 57-point game this week. So that's it. That's it for me. Followed Devi Jake, I always say, is the best commenter on Twitter. He won't post his own original thoughts as much as he will chime in and give great follow-up commentary to a lot of other people's posts. So I think Devi Jake is great to follow, and for his complimentary comments that he gives to everyone. But Jake, any final parting words here?
I just can't thank you enough for having me, Jared. It was great to finally get to talk to you and hear. I've heard your voice, but get to actually interact with you. And yeah, thank you, Willie and Jeremy. You both are legends, and I appreciate what you guys do every week. And yeah, just humbled and thankful to be here.
All right, appreciate it. And then obviously, Jared, Chasing the Natty will be dropping on Monday and Wednesday as usual, I assume. Can you tease any of the topics that we'll have in store for this week?
It's waiver wires and start sits. Again, that's pretty much all we do during the regular season. I wish I was a bit more hard on just like regular news and everything, but there's only so much time, and we go pretty deep on the waiver wire options each week. Obviously, I like this format a lot because again, you cover a lot of players, and it's a lot for this week. But we provide 5 names at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, 3 at tight end every single week, and I go pretty in depth on why they're good pickups. So lots of great stuff you can find there. You can find the kind of shorter version in article form on Campus to Canton as well, where I really kind of break down 3 main guys at each position in that article as well. But yeah, thanks guys. Oh my goodness. Now I'm tripping over my own words. Thanks for having me on, y'all. I always love hanging out with you guys. Jake, like you said, it was great to finally meet you. We've interacted enough on Twitter that this was a long time coming. I'm glad I could finally meet you, man. You're a great guy.
Good. I didn't realize it was the first time you guys, I know Jake doesn't make a ton of appearances, but I didn't realize we were bringing you guys together for the first time. I'm glad we were.
We were matchmakers indeed.
That's right. A match made in heaven here on the Waiver Watch Draft. That's it for me. Good luck everybody in week 4. Willie B, you want to take us out?
Yeah, I'm hoping that everyone gets 100 this week, so that we can have our very first. I feel like this is a great group. And then, obviously, if you get that 100, you're more than likely probably going to be in that running for the playoff little bit later on, so we can catch you guys again.
Right.
But for everyone else watching and listening, good luck this week.